The easy way to deliver.
Why teams stay silent when they know something is wrong? The deadly quiet. There's a kind of silence in aviation that pilots are trained to fear. Not the silence after an engine has suddenly failed. Not the silence after a warning alarm has stopped ringing. The dangerous silence is when communication inside the cockpit begins to disappear during a crisis. Because once a crew stops speaking honestly under pressure, situational awareness collapses even more quickly. And the frightening part is, if you check the cockpit voice recorder, everything would appear absolutely calm and in control inside the cockpit. I have seen similar silence inside organizations too. In the boardrooms, during project reviews, at high pressure meetings, everyone appears professional. Everyone appears aligned. The slides look polished. The dashboard says all green, good to go. But inside the room, something feels wrong. Questions have become shorter. People stop challenging assumptions, and slowly the team stops exploring reality and starts protecting the momentum. In high pressure environments, that kind of silence is dangerous because silence is not always stability. Sometimes silence is the first signal that clarity is collapsing. Imagine a software company preparing for a major global rollout. 48 hours before the launch, the final readiness review begins. The pressure inside the room is already high. Deadlines are tightening. Senior leadership is monitoring, and their visibility inside the room has increased. Everyone understands the importance of success. The meeting moves quickly, actually too quickly. One system architect realizes the load balancing logic is unstable. A junior developer notices a serious API vulnerability. Another manager quietly sees that the recovery timelines are unrealistic. But the momentum inside the room has now become psychological. The energy has shifted from let's understand reality to keep moving. Nobody wants to be the person rocking the boat, the one who slows the mission. Nobody wants to be associated with the delay. So people begin remaining silent. Not because they are weak, not because they lack intelligence, because under pressure, the psychological cost of speaking honestly can start feeling greater than the operational risk itself. And once that happens, human systems begin drifting towards coordinated blindness. The meeting becomes faster, cleaner, more confident, but internally clarity is already degrading. So, why does this happen to intelligent teams? Because pressure changes human behavior in ways most organizations never discuss openly. In aviation, major failures rarely begin with a catastrophe. They begin with signal degradation. Human systems work the same way. Silence should be viewed as an advisory signal. Defensive communication should be viewed as a caution signal. If not, eventually the organization can enter a full-fledged communication collapse emergency without the team realizing it. That is why some failures appear suddenly to an external person, even though internally the collapse started much earlier. One of the most dangerous phrases when used inside any organization is everyone agreed. did they truly agree? Or did the environment become unsafe for disagreement? Because those are very different things. Healthy teams are not teams without tension. Healthy teams are teams where reality can still be spoken safely under pressure. That's a completely different standard. And this is where many organizations become vulnerable. They optimize speed, execution, confidence, alignment. But they forget something critical. If people lose the ability to speak honestly, the system loses its ability to self-correct. And once a human system loses self-correction, small distortions slowly become major operational failures. Because the absence of conflict does not guarantee presence of clarity. I once observed a planning discussion involving a major operational decision. On the surface, the meeting looked efficient, senior leaders were decisive, the briefing was polished, the room appeared aligned. But one officer in the room kept hesitating before speaking. You could see it happen. Several times he leaned forward slightly, then stopped himself. Every time the discussion accelerated, he withdrew further. Eventually, he stopped trying completely. The meeting ended successfully, at least on the surface. Months later, the exact risk this individual had foreseen became a reality and was one of the reasons the initiative failed. It happened not because the teams lacked intelligence, but because the environment trained people to suppress their questions. And once voicing uncertainty becomes unsafe, truth usually disappears with it. This is why the EC3 way places such an importance on the human layer. Because leadership is not about directing action, it's also about protecting clarity inside the system. Sometimes the most important thing a leader can do is to slow down the room long enough for reality to re-enter conversation. That requires empathy, that requires awareness, that requires critical thinking, and that requires efficient communication. Not as soft skill, as operational capabilities. Because if your team loses the ability to speak the truth under pressure, they lose the ability to diagnose reality accurately. And once diagnosis fails, execution itself becomes dangerous. In the AI age, machines will increasingly support logic. But protecting truth inside the human system will remain a human responsibility. So, here's a practical operational tool that you can use immediately. Next time you are inside a meeting that feels strangely too aligned, perform what I call a situational scan. First, the silence check. Look for those who have suddenly stopped contributing, or those who have unusually become quiet, because silence often contains operational data. Second, the curiosity check. Is the room still exploring reality or only defending momentum? Are people asking the why? Why is it true? Why is it like that? And so on. Or only nodding alignment to keep moving. And third, the pause command. Slow the room down. Ask directly, what important things are we not seeing right now? What could crash this project and it's not being seen right now? Because sometimes one honest sentence can prevent a major failure in the future. In high pressure environments, humans rarely fail all at once. That is why clarity under pressure matters. Because the absence of conflict does not mean presence of clarity. This is why the EC3 way: feel, find, solve, and lead. Because this channel is about understanding what is really happening inside human systems under pressure. Subscribe and let's deliver performance beyond expectation. This is Captain Ranjit Isaac signing off.